We're in Psalm 62 today, and I want to talk to you about something that can feel like a right royal waste of time, something that we haven't got time for, but actually something that is incredibly life-giving and absolutely essential for so much of our relationship and life with God. But let's read Psalm 62 and then we'll talk about silence. For God alone my soul waits in silence. From him comes my salvation. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be greatly shaken. How long will all of you attack a man to batter him like a leaning wall, a tottering fence? They only plan to thrust him down from his high position. They take pleasure in falsehood. They bless with their mouths, but inwardly they curse. For God alone, O my soul, wait in silence, for my hope is from him. He only is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be shaken. On God rests my salvation and my glory. My mighty rock, my refuge is God. Trust in him at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Those of low estate are but a breath. Those of high estate are a delusion. In the balances they go up. They are together lighter than a breath. But put no trust in extortion. Set no vain hopes on robbery. If riches increase, set not your heart on them. Once God has spoken, twice have I heard this, that power belongs to God, and that to you, O Lord, belongs steadfast love, for you will render to a man according to his work. You know, we could pray Psalm 62 in so many different ways. Just reading it now, I'm struck by these descriptions of God. He's our salvation, our glory, our rock, our refuge. He's this source of steadfast love. This is a psalm that invites us to praise. It's a psalm that invites us to explore what's going on in our heart. Set not your heart, says this psalm, on the wrong stuff. It's a psalm that invites just so much, and yet one of the strongest commands or invitations, if you like, that leap off the page, you find in verse 1 and then again in verse 5. Wait in silence. Wait in silence. If you're anything like me, you don't find silence a very easy thing. And yet silence is essential for our souls, which is why the psalmist even speaks to himself. He says, for God alone, oh my soul, wait in silence. It's like he's self-coaching or self-chatting. But silence is that place where we learn and we grow and we hear and we're stretched and trust builds. What do we know from the Bible about silence? We know that in silence it's a place that we get to know God because there's space. We know that in silence we find hope because, again, there's space for us to almost discover it or hear it. We know that silence is a good practice for learning to say good things with our mouths. By practicing silence, we learn to shut our mouths on the bad stuff that often comes out. You find that silence in the Bible is also like a symbol of respect. We stand in front of or in the presence of this awesome God. What's the right response? Probably just to be really, really quiet and still and let him speak. But also in silence we hear ourselves, don't we? Sometimes the busyness and the noisiness of life is there because we don't want to hear how we really feel about stuff. It's almost like a way of numbing ourselves to the pain of things. But also, sadly, that numbing activity, the noisy interruptions we feed our lives with, often actually prevent us from hearing the Lord speak himself. And when I think about how we can grow in trust, we grow in trust through listening to the Lord. Silence is hard. Silence takes practice. But without it, we're missing some of the wonderful depths of the kingdom. For God alone, our souls need to learn to wait in silence. Now, I've been talking for nearly 5 minutes. Imagine if we were to do this every day, to stop, to wait, and to be silent for 5 minutes. I wonder how that would shape us and feed us and change our prayer lives. So have a read again of Psalm 62. Maybe put a stopwatch on. Press start on that stopwatch and wait in silence for 5 minutes.